Hello and welcome to Off My Shelves, and in this episode we're going to be looking at Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki. And yeah, let's get underway. I have no idea because I haven't watched the animated film, the anime feature-length film, or googled it much if I'm pronouncing her name. Let's actually get that out of the way now. Nausicaä?
Nausicaa.
Nausicaa, right. Welcome to Off My Shelves, and this is a look at Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki. So yeah, this is an amazing comic book version, a comic book epic really, of Hayao Miyazaki's movie of the same name. Now if you have watched the movie but haven't read the book, then I have no idea whether the two are comparable because I haven't watched the movie yet. I always in my head wanted to read the book first and then go to the movie. So yeah, you're going to have to figure that one out on your own really, the comparison between the two. But the book itself is an amazing epic adventure on every level in this post-apocalyptic world following our main character. Nausicaa. But before we get into the story, let's look at the build of the book. It comes in a slipcase with 2 hardback volumes and with a poster inside as well. The poster is only A3 size or thereabouts, I think, yeah. But the 2 books are amazingly oversized, which are great for manga because you don't get too much manga that is actually oversized. For my money, this is one of the best value box sets you can buy really. I know the retail on a UK price is £55, so even a full retail I still think it's amazing value, to be honest. And why is because the slipcase is a nice solid slipcase with nice designs all around, top, back, bottom, all that type of thing. But the books themselves are super well made, sewn binding. They are black and white pretty much dominantly throughout, but they have got some colour pages at the start of each book, which are great colour depictions of characters from this world and all that type of thing. But you can get this generally on UK sites, you know, for £30–35, and for that price, this is definitely, I think, one of the most best value box sets that are out there, without the shadow of a doubt, because both books are so well made. The paper quality is great, the print, the design, everything about them. They don't come with dust jackets at all, but they have got some great art to them. 2 volumes, you get that complete story. Each volume is around about 550–600 pages long or thereabouts. And yeah, it's just a fabulously well designed set. I think this is amazing that we don't get more manga in this high quality print style for an affordable price. But anyway, the story of Nausicaa. It starts off really trying to gradually build this world that we're coming into. As it says in the beginning, in a few short centuries, industrial civilization has spread from the western fringes of Eurasia to the sprawls across the face of the planet, plundering the soils of the riches and fouling the air. And it goes on. Essentially what we've got a world ravaged by industrialization, and the science and the technological advancement that this world has created has been used to actually decimate populations. They created gigantic robots and things like that are powered in very unique different ways, but eventually the whole world burned, and now mankind is kind of pushed to the fringes because the world itself, the natural ecosystem, is kind of fighting back almost as well. But you catch up with Nausicaa as she's travelling into what's known as the Sea of Corruption, and Hayao Miyazaki does a wonderful job in putting maps kind of strategically throughout the book so you know geographically what we're talking about. But essentially all the main human communities have been pushed to the side, and the Sea of Corruption is just this dense forestry of insects and fungus and mould, that the air itself is detrimental to humankind. Even bringing spores from the Sea of Corruption into where you live will infect that area and stop crops from growing and have disastrous effects on your community. So the humans have basically sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now they're living on the fringes of society when the natural world is just encroaching and growing ever more. And so they've learned to adapt to live in this world, and Nausicaa living in what's called the Valley of the Wind. She lives very near the Sea of Corruption, but because they have a strong wind going through that valley, the community there, even though it's a few hundred people, they thrive because the spores don't get a chance to settle and things like that. The Valley of the Wind is set up much like most of the other areas that you come across in the book, and what I mean by that is there's a hierarchy, so there's a king or a leader of a tribe, and Nausicaa is one of the princesses of this tribe, and so she's one of the leaders, and her father is kind of on his last legs. He's not doing too great, and so she's preparing to take over the tribe. We catch up with her though when she's at a turning point in her life, when she's realised she can understand and telepathically communicate with a lot of the insect life in the Sea of Corruption, and even some of the kind of fungus and other living creatures and living beings. She can actually hear their thoughts, hear their feelings, and kind of empathise and communicate with them, which is a massive skill obviously, but it's in her very early stages when we start the book, and the whole series is really her trying to find out how far this power goes, what she can do, how she can use this power to bring balance between the living creatures in the Sea of Corruption and the human beings, and try to restore a bit of balance to the world in some way, and try to restore understanding between the two places more than anything. You realise quite early on in this epic story as well that it's not necessarily the insects and the fungus and the spores and everything in the Sea of Corruption that's threatening to destroy human civilization in this world. It's the inability of these different communities and different countries to actually coexist that's the biggest problem really. You get a whole load of other tribes and other royalty and other armies getting involved. Nausicaa's tribe, like many other tribes, have committed kind of their resources to be part of other communities, so they've allied with other places and committed resources like the gunship and things like that. The people in the Valley of the Wind are great pilots. Nausicaa uses a kind of almost like a self-propelling hand glider to get around, and yeah, she's amazingly skilled and talented as a pilot, but a lot of other people in the community are as well, and they've got this very unique gunship that people want on their side when war is coming. And Nausicaa eventually leaves the Valley of the Wind to take the gunship to fight with her allies, and then she's, like I say, pulled into all these different conflicts. But when you leave that, you are very much pulled into gigantic warfare situation. But then in the in-between times, Nausicaa is still trying to figure out how to use her powers. Her powers are still developing, but all the while she's finding more and more stronger and ruthless enemies, but then amazing allies along the way as well. And so it's very much the story of her discovering her powers, going through all these different communities and world and trying to end this war, this conflict. And she actually turns herself into more of a kind of prophet of peace as the book goes on really. She is the kind of voice of reason, and it's mad really, the length of these two books and this story, and the amount of text again and the amount of images, because sometimes the pages are just crammed with imagery and words, but they never seem too overwhelming. They always flow really well. Miyazaki is clearly a genius storyteller, and he uses his skills so well in this series of books, I think, because initially you're introduced on the fringes of this world, and you're introduced of the kind of basics of it, you know, the Sea of Corruption, this world being devastated by warfare and lots of different things going on. But you're introduced to it on a small scale with a small community on the outside, and then you follow Nausicaa through going into the wider world, and you kind of find out about it as she does. That's why she's such a great main character to have in there, because even though she's got these powers to communicate and to do different things, you discover those powers as she's discovering them. You discover these new and different communities as she's discovering. You discover the different cultures that exist in this world and the different way people dress and eat and talk as she discovers them. So it never feels too overwhelming. It feels like you're exactly where you need to be. You're just following the main character as she's going through these different situations and places. So when you suddenly find yourself in a gigantic sprawling battle with thousands of men on either side, and then getting attacked by bugs and an army of armies in fact of huge bugs flocking over and destroying countries and communities, you're never overwhelmed by it, because the way you've been led into it has been very, very structured and very well done. The pacing is exceptional. In fact, there's only one criticism that I could probably level of this whole series, because the art is phenomenal on every level. I mean, for a book this dense with characters, you're never confused as to what character is what, and the lack of colour as well sometimes does that, but the character design is so strong. The character design on the different communities is so strong, so you never get mixed up with one side or the other, because stylistically they are so different. I mean, the people from the Valley of the Wind look different from people from elsewhere, and it's just geniusly drawn and depicted and well thought out, and I got no criticisms at all on that level. The lettering, however, is a little bit of a criticism for me, because a lot of conversations happen in this series of books telepathically, and there's a lot of narration that goes on, and sometimes the way the text boxes are laid out and the way they are depicted, really, it can be confusing whether they are speaking these words or whether it's in their head or whether they are physically talking them out loud. Sometimes that can get a bit confused, but overall it's not a deal breaker by any stretch of imagination, because as soon as you realise there's something up, you kind of adjust to it anyway. So it's pretty straightforward, and it's a very minimal criticism, but it's a not so subtle look really at warfare and climate change and biological weapons and cloning and how we treat the world around us and how we treat nature and everything and our fellow man and all that. And so I really enjoyed this a lot, and I can't wait to jump back into it, because by the time I got to the end of it, there were certain bits that you forget from the start of the story because it's so epic and sprawling. And yeah, so there's a lot of scope for rereading and discovering bits of the story that you missed the first time round. But in general, it's just beautiful to look at the pages that he's created. I mean, the effort that must have gone into this is mind-boggling. Just when you look at how the different kind of architecture in the book is structured, the different communities, the different characterizations. Honestly, when I see a world building on this level, I'm just in awe of it. He didn't just draw a picture of this world, he actually understands how all the different communities of this world work together, what they have against one another, their allies, their enemies, their cultures, everything. And again, it's just such a wonderful thing to read, to immerse yourself in a totally unique fantasy world with a fascinating story, an epic story on every level, with really good characters. And yeah, I can't really recommend it enough. But anyway, that's all I got to say about Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at it with me, and I will catch you on the next one.